Good morning again, and welcome to Searching the Heart. I want to do a brief session today on Nigeria, and it's a very peculiar topic. Okay, recently, like we talked about, Nigeria has been in the news because of issues of the insurgency problem and Trump's intervention. But I have been one of those who has said that there are greater issues at stake, and one of the issues is the issue of the economy. Okay, a nation is built on so many things. Okay, uh, its sociology, its polity, its economics. Okay, its security architecture that is part of the process of nation building. Now, all these things work together in a country, and one affects the other. Okay, and so you cannot look at one without talking about the other. And I'm one of those who has said that if the United States wants to really help Nigeria, they have to also be considerate concerning the economics, okay, of the existence of Nigeria itself. Okay, so I'm going to be looking a little into that. Okay, and I want to dabble with a little controversial topic, and that topic is because possibly I raised that topic at a point. Okay, are the rich stealing from the poor in Nigeria? I raised that topic in one of my podcasts after going through a series of discussions on why Nigeria is the way it is at this time. Okay, and yes, somebody confirmed, one important person, Bishop Kwashi, at a point confirmed some of my suspicions that yes, there is a war against the poor in Nigeria. Okay, that is his own view. Of course, I portrayed it as an effort to cancel out the middle class. Okay, that was our observation, my observation. Okay, and middle class is okay, just the higher echelon of the poor. Okay, so if you want to cancel out the middle class, that means you're creating a larger demographic of poor people. Okay, so this is the problem. If there's a war against the poor, then it means that there is a large scale stealing from the poor in Nigeria. Okay, I would want to side with this belief. Okay, from the daily experiences that we've been having in the business sector, the rise in crime, and also this is seen also in the rise in insecurity and insurgency in some parts, banditry in most parts. Okay, so and that is why Trump is talking about intervention, has begun a process of intervention. Okay, so I'll be looking a little into these issues in this video today. First of all, I want to tackle the issue of the relationship between Nigeria and most third world countries with the West. Okay, this has been a controversial issue over the decades, and I want to talk about it today. And this has caused the problem that we are facing now because the West has redesigned the nature of its engagement with third world countries. And this has really described some of the problems that we're facing right now, okay? Because leaders of these countries have changed also their approach. So how do these trade relationships work? I'll continue after this. How do the trade relationships work in between developed countries and lesser developed ones? First of all, we have to remember that for the most part, development was started in the Middle East and moved westward, okay, for the most part. So if you come back to the Middle East and extend towards India, right back a little north towards China, you see some remnants of that development were still going on, and that is why you have China becoming more developed at this point, okay, in this time. And India also expanding, being one of the largest economies in the world, okay. So it's the remnants of the Middle Eastern civilization. But why didn't this affect Africa? It affected Africa a little. You see remnants of the same thing in Ethiopia and Egypt, okay, but the culture of the people in Africa is a bit different. Africans tend to want to protect their natural surroundings. They value nature and religion more than other cultures, and that is why the difference, okay. But for the most part, the West, which is Europe, that later extended into America and migrated into Australia, that is the civilization that nurtured the civilization that began in the Middle East, okay. Talking about technology, whether in agriculture, and in all other parts, they nurtured this technology and became the greater economies and led the rise of the modern economy, okay, through the Industrial Revolution. So this is what we need to know, and this is what has given birth to the modern global economy that we have, or global civilization that we have, okay. So this trade now, because of this modernization of the economy, there is a natural trade imbalance, okay. It is a natural imbalance because what has dictated trade over the millennia is that when a civilization discovers something of value, it uses that value to now trade with other civilizations, like the discovery of what? Metal, for one, okay. Metal dictated trade over centuries and centuries, okay. And so, of course, metal dictated the Industrial Revolution, and of course, that anybody with that power will dictate trade. And so they did. They did that through the transatlantic slave trade. They did that through colonialism, okay. They colonized even India, at a point, colonized China itself, okay. So this is what the West has on the rest of the world, okay. So there is this natural imbalance in trade relationships, okay. And so the West always has something greater to trade as compared to what the rest of the world has, especially Nigeria, especially Africa, okay. We have are our raw materials, okay, the unprocessed, be it palm oil, be it groundnut oil, be it groundnuts themselves, of course, cotton, before you even talk about petroleum, okay. So these are the only things we have. But the West comes with what? Technical experience, okay, technical know-how, and just because of that, they have, an upper hand. Not to mention military power, okay. So this is what we see here. So there's that natural imbalance in the world economy, and what this creates is a form of dependency, okay. The lesser economies are always dependent on the Western economies for whatever it is. They literally create our economy, okay, because our economy was mostly agrarian, okay. Whether pastoralists or subsistence farmers, okay. And that was all. Little by little, from Arabia, we started trading in clothing, okay. And that was, I think, the best that we could do. And a little in metal, and that created the Borno kingdoms. They had the Kano Emirates, that was the best we could do. The Benin kingdom was peculiar. They had their own peculiar civilization there, okay, and other civilizations of course outside of Nigeria, like in Zambia and the like. So these are the things, okay? We are lesser dependent on technology than they are. And so when they came, they created a new economy, okay? And for that reason, we are totally dependent on them for whatever we have today. I'll continue after this. So what happens in this scenario where you have a smaller, more dependent economy on a larger one? Okay, our leaders did something wrong, okay, which every inexperienced economy would do. Okay, they bought into the Western thing, okay, but they could not really sustain it. Okay, and one mistake that they always make and still are making is that, of course, the people they create white collar jobs, of course, in the likeness of the Western economy, and attract people into the urban space. Okay, people get employment, get educated, get employment in the urban space. Okay, albeit slowly. Give credit to Africans, they didn't really jump at this. Okay, it was a slow movement, and I have done other videos and I've said that this slow movement is actually still affecting us, because we are embracing the Western concepts and yet still having some form of nostalgia for our old systems. The problem with us, we see this as positive while it is negative, because unconsciously it has created corruption, the corruption that we are complaining about. Oh, there's so much corruption. This has been created because we lost after the things of the West, and yet claim to have some form of nostalgia for the old ways. Okay, so this is what it has been created. Okay, but what happens after then? What happens? We begin to experience the same problems that the West experiences. Okay, a rise in poverty, a rise in unemployment, high cost of living, for various reasons. One, the imbalance in trade. We don't have enough money to fund our own economy. Okay, because of our wholesale acceptance of the modern economy. We want to participate in globalization. Of course, so we have to adopt a currency. The most popular currency, the dollar, the pound, and then we created our own currency. So we have to keep on feeding that currency, okay? And of course feeding the economy. So we go back to the West, okay? And the mistake that many leaders make is this imbalance of trade. They are unable to accept this imbalance. And what do they do to correct it? They print money, okay? They print money. Remember that this money we're talking about, first and foremost, is paper, okay? Has no commodity value. So you spend a lot of money printing paper, okay? And of course, you are not only already handicapped trade-wise, you are spending money in printing paper, which possibly has no good or commodity value behind it, okay? And the idea is that this paper in the hands of people will make their lives better, because they can actually use it to buy more goods, okay? Pay their rent, pay their transport fare, pay for water services, buy food. Of course, but the problem is that if this money has no real commodity value, that means there's the amount of it's chasing fewer goods, there will be inflation, naturally, okay? There will be inflation. The cost of food will increase, cost of basic amenities will increase, rent, transportation, all will Okay, because the money has no commodity value. Okay, so this is the problem that many African leaders faced. So they kept on struggling with these problems, and there is a result. Of course, the dip in currency value. Okay, people who lived in the late 70s, early 80s will tell you that there was a point where the naira was 1 naira was equals to $1. Okay, just being in summary. Okay, it went back and forth. There was a time even the naira was more valuable. Okay, but there was a point that these things were just equal. Okay, Nigerians were considered to be rich. Some Nigerians who went abroad were considered to be rich. Africans were considered rich. If you're wondering where the film Coming to America got that concept, now you know. Okay, because Nigerians that traveled abroad were spending like crazy. Okay, they had a lot of money because the Nigerian currency was almost at par with foreign currencies. Okay, so this is what happened. But the Nigerian currency began to dip suddenly, and the reasons were as follows: the rising corruption, okay, rural-urban drift that created a huge demand for the flamboyant urban lifestyle, but lesser people were involved in agriculture as it was. Remember the groundnut pyramids. Remember our basking in oil, not petroleum now, but palm oil, exportation of palm oil. Okay. And at the same time, at the height of this agricultural prosperity, we discovered oil. Okay, and so Nigeria was so prosperous. Okay, but because of this, people began to rush to the urban centers. They abandoned the farms, okay, and they rushed to the urban centers. And this rush into the urban centers created a lot of demand for foreign goods. And so, more importation, less production. Remember, we're already behind anyway, industrially. Okay, so more importation, less production, and more printing of money, leading to inflation. Okay, leading to inflation. So this is what happened. Of course, the printing of money came later on when the governments discovered the problem that already existed. Okay, the high demand, okay, for a flamboyant lifestyle in the cities resulted in government trying to cover up, but lacking the raw materials to cover up with, and so they printed more money. Okay, so this is the problem. I'll continue after this. So, the fall of the Nigerian naira. Okay. Now, what currency devaluation causes is very interesting. There are some positives in currency devaluation, and the positives are, I believe, were emphasized when it was discovered that Nigerians were living beyond their means. Okay, of course, thereby printing more money, and so creating an unnatural economy. Okay, so of course the IMF say, okay, devalue your currency because you are living a lie. Okay, that is it. But let's say Nigerians were not doing all that. Okay, there is a great negative in currency devaluation. And what natural currency devaluation means is that, of course, your economy is getting poorer and poorer. Okay, because you are buying more than you are producing. Okay, you are consuming more than you are producing, and so the value of your currency is weakening and weakening in value. Okay, so this is what is happening. Okay, and so, of course, that leads to migration of the best and the brightest. Now, there is a ripple effect in all this, okay? We're saying that there is a scramble for the few jobs in the city. And then your best and your brightest are going overseas, okay? They are leaving the country and they are giving their expertise to foreign nations. Now, I'm not talking about people in the arts. I'm not talking about people in philosophy. No, I'm talking about people, engineers. I'm talking about medical personnel. I'm talking about economic specialists, okay? People who really directly affect the economy, okay? Directly. These people leave the country. And why are they leaving the country? They are leaving the country because, first and foremost, your country has at the time, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the level of education was really low. So there was, people really didn't appreciate education as we appreciate it now, okay? Of course, this has led to some of the problems we have now, of course, but that was the reality. So your expertise will be appreciated more outside. And in the same light, because of the appreciation of certain ways of life, okay? Of course, you discover that the only way, if you wanted to live a particular way, you could only live such flamboyant, comfortable lives as you desired as an educated Nigerian outside Nigeria, okay? Of course, in many African countries, revolutions began against people who were, in quote and unquote, too educated, okay? Remember what happened to Lumumba in the Congo when he was arrested by the Kupis. They stuffed a piece of paper in his mouth. Okay, what were they saying? Why don't you eat the paper that you are disturbing us about? You know, the criticism among African revolutionaries is that the Western economy is too dependent on paper, okay? And the African economy is actually about the soil, okay? What you can farm for the soil and how you can control that economy, okay? But they could not really understand what this paper was all about. And so, of course, when they caught Lumumba, they stuffed a piece of paper in his mouth. And everywhere in Africa is like that, okay? There's so much criticism about the paper. So, corruption itself was created when people pushed aside the paper and just helped themselves to the resources, okay? At another level, all they did was use the paper to create whatever they wanted to create. And of course, help themselves to the resources. In the same vein, print as much money, okay? It's paper after all, okay? If it is valuable, let us just print more. So this is what happened, okay? So there was migration, okay? The best and the brightest educated ones left the country, okay? And of course, what happened? The myth created is that when people go out of the country, it brings in foreign exchange. But in the same light, well, that is if they left the country in good faith, okay? And the same voice, these are the people who would have created industries. These are the people who would have employed the unemployed or the uneducated. But when they leave the country, of course, those jobs are not there. And they leave people stranded, okay? People who don't have the imagination, okay, to create their own jobs. And it continues on and on and on. Okay? So, migration out of the country creates unemployment. Strangely enough, this is one of the things that many people don't realize. Now, the answer that most of our leaders want to say today in Nigeria is the answer of remittances. Okay? They say, okay, Nigerians overseas, give a phenomenal amount in remittances. And well, it is true of Nigeria peculiarly, okay? And I have heard also Africa as a whole. And the remittances industry has really, really is controlling. I've said it over and over. The banks. That is why some of the banks are doing very well. Okay, because of the issue of remittances. Okay, so this is true. But also, like when I checked the remittances of the year 2024, I discovered that it dwarfed the amount of services Nigeria was importing. Okay, remittances are only as valuable as the balance of trade. Okay, Nigeria was spending far more in services, importing services from overseas, than it was getting in remittances. Okay, so this is what we need to look at. That was for the year 2024, I believe. So this is just it. Okay, and this is what is creating the over dependence on the dollar, and that is why the Nigerian currency completely tumbled against the dollar, especially after the removal of subsidy on oil. Okay, so this is just what we see. Nigeria was actually managing to, by putting that subsidy to keep the dollar in check, but immediately the subsidy was removed, it tumbled. That is a discussion for another day, and we're going to look a little into this, looking at the Dangote refinery and seeing those things that are influencing the Nigerian economy today in this light. Before I forget the topic is very important. Are the rich stealing from the poor in Nigeria? Okay. Now, the reason I agree that the rich are stealing from the poor is simple. Corruption itself, which is something that dates from early after the Civil War. Okay. The discovery of oil created a rich economy, and the rush into urban centers created corruption, including the disdain for Western education. Okay, created large-scale corruption. And of course, when you come to a country that has been historically accused of pampering slavery pre-independence, okay, the Portuguese, of course, pampered the slave trade. The English did not, but it was a situation of slavery. It was a highly feudal economy. Okay, and when you refuse to reform that economy, and you create all the things that I have spoken about, of course, is an economy that will quickly rush back into that form of feudalism. Okay, and the way it expresses that form of feudalism is by the rich, the elite, the nobles, of course, returning to that situation where they purposefully, deliberately impoverish the poor. Okay, of course, I have talked about this. Cutting away the middle class, encouraging, discouraging education because they want to use the uneducated as laborers and all that, and this is what it creates. So yes, of course, what is the result? The creation of band groups that become bandits and become a security threat to the country. Some of them, of course, sponsored by these elite, and some of them just existing because they want to defend themselves, okay, from this banditry. Okay, so this is what is going on. So I will now look at, while this is going on, and there is, of course, migration out of the country to escape some of this banditry, to escape to a better life, okay, to go to where you are appreciated, okay. What is happening? A man rose up, okay, and his name is Aliko Dangote, okay. And I'm very, very interested in Aliko Dangote because he's a man who has really dominated the Nigerian scene for a very long time, okay. First and foremost, as one of those who began his own business here in Nigeria and then took it overseas, okay, with his sugar industries and investments in different sectors like in household groceries, and all that, okay? He was known for all those things, and he made his millions in that sector. And when he returned to Nigeria, he first of all went into the cement industry, okay? Dangote today is known mostly for the cement industry, but that is not where he started, okay? Many of us miss that, okay? That is not where he started. He made millions in the sugar industry, okay? Exporting sugar from Nigeria and bringing in refined sugar, okay? That was refined overseas. Now, I'm not going to talk about some of the criticisms Dangote got for this, because some people felt he should have established the sugar industry here in Nigeria. Okay, in those days we needed to industrialize Nigeria. That was in the early 80s, late 80s, of course. So that criticism actually probably brought Dangote back. From what I know, in the early 90s, Dangote came back into Nigeria to establish industries here in Nigeria. Okay, and one of the places he decided to invest was the cement industry. Okay, by buying Ashaka Sem, buying Benue Sem cement. Okay, and he turned an industry that was failing into a vibrant industry again, and that is to his credit. So we see a very important thing in this man. We see where the blame lies. I believe that in Dangote we will see where the blame lies in Nigeria, okay? And the blame squarely lies in the leadership. Just from that man Dangote. Because he has a knack for turning around things that the government was failing at, okay? The government at the time, of course. And who is the government? The government is the prevailing elite, Nigerian elite. There is no one person you can say is the Nigerian elite, okay? But the popular Nigerian elite, okay? They were failing in governing Nigeria. They were failing in creating industries, jobs. Dangote came and turned that around by buying those industries they were failing at, okay? So that is one thing Dangote did. But when he did that, and he did all that during the Obasanjo period, okay? He went ahead to begin a project. He wanted to establish a refinery. That was another place that the Nigerian government was failing at. The refineries were not working. Okay? So Dangote took the initiative and said, I'm going to build a refinery. Okay? It was kind of very hush-hush thing. Very few people knew about it until he had almost finished. But the problem happened again. The same thing happened again. Okay? The elite, the prevailing elite, decided to invest in Dangote. Albeit indirectly. Okay? And so when some of the problems were happening, especially in northern Nigeria, okay, when we talk about banditry and all those things, it was observed that certain people were benefiting from these problems, okay? Like I told you, it is indirect. It is not really something you can really put your finger on. But this is the attitude of the Nigerian elite, the popular Nigerian elite, okay? They are feudalist. And so they have this tendency to perpetrate such feudalist atrocities, okay? Governors began to build. They began to build roads, infrastructure. They began to encourage people overseas to come and build in Nigeria, establish shops, industries in Nigeria, and all that. And of course, which industry will benefit from this? It is, of course, the building industry, okay? The cement industry. Very important, okay? And so, as Dangote was building his refinery, a group of Nigerian elite were actually buying Dangote cement. It is not only buying Dangote cement, there was a lot of cement coming, like Boa cement, so many industries now propping up, manufacturing cement. But all these industries benefited from this, okay? Investment in infrastructure in Nigeria, especially in the north, okay, and also in the south. And this must have indirectly funded Dangote's refinery. And while people will say Dangote really took a very, very bold step in like he did with the cement industry, in establishing this refinery and making it a success as we are seeing now, others will argue Nigerians paid for it by patronizing Dangote. Okay? Dangote cement especially. And one of the things I also noticed was the how Nigerian workers, especially women, would actually love to buy Dangote noodles instead of rice. Okay, so it was conscious. This is Nigeria. This is Nigeria, and for all your criticisms of Nigerians, they have that tendency to show solidarity to their son, as it were. Okay, and this is what I observed personally. Okay, in fact, sometimes I got frustrated. I don't have money. My wife and I were able to put up a small 2-bedroom flat, but I kept on getting offers, buy blocks, build your house. At a point I got frustrated. I don't have money to build a house because Nigerians wanted to invest in cement. So I want to argue, is my point of view, that Dangote may have benefited from a little stealing of the Nigerian elite, of the poor, okay, and the middle class. Not that he wanted to, but he must have, okay? And secondly, Nigerians have already invested in Dangote, okay? Now, this is at point 1. Point 2 is the transport sector. Do what you can. I thought that after the removal of oil subsidy, Nigerians will not drive cars anymore. I actually sold my car, okay? But do you know the number of cars on the street today almost dwarf the cars that were on the street when subsidy was still in place? Okay, so this is the Nigeria we're talking about. So I still put another point to Dangote, okay? Nigerians have invested in you, okay? And they have invested in your industry. Now, corruption within the Nigerian elite is another thing, and possibly also the Nigerian workers, okay? I agree with Dangote on those points. But I still say Nigerians have invested in Dangote already, okay? Dangote this year has proposed a very good solution to some of Nigeria's problems, okay? First of all, of course, tackling corruption, which he has spoken very openly about. And of course, I am one of those who is really perplexed by the desire of some petroleum marketers, to keep petrol at a very high level, okay? And I must say that this is very much linked to the high exchange rate. There seems to be a desire to keep that exchange rate very high. It is not explainable. It's something it has really perplexed my mind. I am unable to explain why. In every way possible, a group of Nigerian elite are struggling to keep the exchange rate high. I don't know why. The Nigerians have invested in Dangote, and Dangote has really talked about solving the Nigerian corruption problem by pointing out certain individuals he believes are involved in this corruption. But I must say that it really is important that people like Dangote, Tony Elumelu, and the likes really do a little more. Well, there's little they can do. I've always defended people like them, okay, because they are people who are not into all these political shenanigans. They are more into business and investment. I respect business people, okay, and there's little you can do when you have a lot of investments to protect. You can't really get into that politics like that because it affects your business, okay. And so, but Dangote actually put forward, a kind of suggestion that he's going to go public with the refinery and Nigerians should buy into the refinery. And it's a very laudable initiative. And but I have to say that I think solving the corruption problem is more likely to help Nigeria, than that. I remember when these solutions were pitted by the Obasanjo regime in selling Transcorp and all that. Many Nigerians today are disgruntled because they bought into some of the companies under Transcorp and the like, and lost their money, lost their investment, because of course Dangote knows he's not uneducated in these things. He knows that the risk involved is very high, and if a company fails, of course the investments mostly are lost. So but of course we know that the petroleum sector is kind of unique. It is most probably going to succeed, but it's not 100%. And when I looked at my own experience with investments, I used to have shares in a particular company. I sold them in 2024, and these were shares I bought when I was about 19, 20 years of age. And I bought these shares by just saving 100 naira a month, for a particular period of time. And they were at about the time I sold them, they were 2,000 plus shares. And I sold them, and I got about close to 125,000 naira. Yeah, it was something. I was able to pay at least a school fees of one of my children. There was two of them. With that, and that was great. But this investment was over 20-year period, 25 year period. And investing just about maybe about 5,000 or so got me about 100 and something thousand. It was good, but that's the nature of such investments. They are long-term investments, not short-term. I bought another company just about in 2021 or so, or 2022, I can't remember, and I sold them the same year. And I didn't make a kobo on that investment. I sold them the same year I sold the other company. And I will just name the companies. It was GT Bank and MTN. GT Bank I bought in 1999, and I sold in 2024. All I got was 100 or something on 5,000 naira investment. Good investment, I would say. MTN I bought about 2022 or so, and I sold 2024. I got zero on my investment. And why did I sell MTN shares when I could have bought more? Why? Because the shares were not doing very well. The economy was bad, and I didn't see the advantage. And most importantly, we are living in a pseudo economy. I did not mention that. I've been talking about necromancy. What I discovered with owning such shares was that people were deceptively using my identity, and giving my identity to some of our billionaires and millionaires, and we're telling people that I owned millions of shares when I only had about, MTN was just about 100, GT was just about 2,000 plus. And so I said, look, I don't need this. They were putting me as a billionaire. So when I go to buy something that was in the market, somebody would charge me what he would charge a billionaire. So I sold them. I said, I don't need this. So this is the issue with the Nigerian economy that Dangote has to know. So when he is bringing his refinery into that market, he should know the things that are affecting that business. And also from this experience, I got to understand that if, let's say, you want to turn this long-term investment into a short-term investment, I discovered that you would need, if Dangote was to sell one of his shares today, of course it would not be at 5 naira, it will not be at 10 naira, it won't be at 50 naira, it will probably be 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, because it's in the petroleum sector, maybe even 1,000. Okay, how many people can buy that? Okay, and if they bought it, how many shares can they buy? What I discovered that if you were to buy a share that was worth about 1 to 200 naira, okay, you would need not less than 20 million naira in investment to get a monthly dividend of close to 100,000. That means a yearly dividend of course, a million plus. Okay, that could keep somebody alive. Okay, yeah, you could keep somebody alive just at the bare minimum. 100,000 a month is not bad. Okay, but that's what you need, 20 million naira. Who can give 20 million naira to a company he does not know if it's going to survive tomorrow? Okay, it's in the petroleum sector, it's going to survive. Okay, but who has the kind of bravery to give all he has, into that? Most people invest in companies because you can actually give that 20 million in 3 different places. Okay, so you just have, you say, okay, Dangote refinery will be one that I would want to invest. Maybe a Lumelu can do that. Okay, but definitely not me. Okay, and definitely not the market woman. Definitely not the civil servant. Who is earning probably about 300,000 at most if he's a permanent secretary. Okay, so this is the problem. Okay, this is the problem, and I believe that even though Dangote has good intentions, solving Nigerian problems goes beyond this. Okay, this is shares. The shares business is something introduced in a stable economy. Nigerian economy is still struggling. Okay, we need to solve the socio-political problems, the cultural problems, okay, that are really destroying the Nigerian economy. Like if somebody has 100 shares, you can't say he's a millionaire or a billionaire. No, he doesn't have anything, in fact. Okay, those shares are just there for the next 50 years. If you can sell them the next 50 years and the company is still good, fine. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, so I want to call on our brother, our father, somebody like Aliko Dangote to continue the good work, but he needs to come together with his compatriots here to stem this issue of corruption. I'm David Dungi Chinke for you today in Searching God.
Discover a transformative journey into the kingdom of heaven. Following the initial publication, the author dives deeper with 2 insightful follow-up books. Ever felt disconnected from God even in worship? Explore how God's unconventional ways can transform your life. How can you align with divine plans, avoiding distractions? Find answers in The Kingdom of Heaven on Earth and The 3, Illuminating Christian Truths and Prophetic Practices. Unlock profound insights guiding you toward a deeper connection with God. Don't miss out. Dive into this enlightening exploration today. Click the link on the caption to get your copy.